The Voice newspaper, as you know, is Britain's leading black newspaper. It's been around for 30 years, and it's certainly one of the things that we try and do a lot of is to campaign on issues that affect the community in the UK. Right, now, I'm just going to do a quick introduction around the table here this morning. To my far left is well-known activist, campaigner, and also somebody who is well-known in Lambeth, Mr. Lee Jasper, and Brixton. Glad to have you, Lee. Next to Lee is Mr. Ed Davey, who is chair of Lambeth Council Health and Adult Social Services. To my right is Mr. Wilf Sulivvan, who is Race Equalities Officer for Trade Union Congress. But today, Wilf will also be speaking on behalf of another organization within the union, BECTU. And BECTU is the union which looks after broadcasting and entertainment, and that's one of the topics we'll be looking at today in Choice FM. And over beside Wilf is Miss Jackie Adusi, Chief Executive of Akaya Housing. So, what I would just, and if you allow me to sit down, what I'm going to do is just, if I could just focus on Choice FM. Part of the Choice FM contract, in terms of getting a license, was that during their programming, at least 21 hours per week would be dedicated to the type of music I mentioned before. So that's something which obviously got people upset. And even till today, we still get the feedback coming through. It's big on our Facebook page in terms of people responding to it. And we also put it out there that we feel that Ofcom should have a look at what Capital Extra is doing to see if they have actually breached it. And I think we now have an agreement from Ofcom to start to monitor them. So that's certainly where the situation is. And what I would like to say is if anybody would want to have any comment on that, and I would probably want to give this to my good friend Neil.
If you can imagine the struggle that we went through, Capital Radio had like 100 light bulbs and we had one. Yeah. And with that one light bulb, which is about 25 watts, we made it a success. So when they couldn't defeat us, and advertisers, of course, shy away from us. It was a real struggle. I was in charge of revenue, and it was a real tough fight to convince advertisers to come in, particular corporate and agencies and so forth. And we found a way to be successful. And of course, after that success, we went on to win North London license, then Birmingham and so forth. They brought a lot of money to the shareholders. That people who were not getting dividend from the company felt that it was necessary to just grab this money and go. I was the only person that rejected that. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to be partner with Capital Radio. So I had to reluctantly take the decision because I believe that radio is so important to our community.
It's a bit weird, this lamentable demise of Choice FM. You know, how long ago was Choice FM sold?
10 years ago.
10 years ago. So it's a decade since Capital bought Choice FM. And now they've, over that 10 years, they've progressively weakened the community and black aspects of the radio as it's been pumping out and stuff. And it's come to this pretty pass. I would have thought that the time to rally around Choice is when it needed our support 10 years ago in order to prevent the buyout happening. It's sort of, there's something a bit perverse about the sound of softly closing stable doors. And, you know, the fact is that it was sold 10 years ago, they bought it. When it was sold, everybody predicted they'd rinse it out for what it was worth and then change it. We sort of knew that was going to happen. And yet we're acting a little surprised now it has happened. I do believe we should take the fight to Ofcom. I think Ofcom have got a big responsibility here. One, enforcing the conditions of the original licence, and two, doing what Neil said, which is providing a London-wide licence.
You all have to go to digital, yet nobody have the radio set. So when you, like Colourful Radio, for instance, is a great example. They've been trying so hard, they can't get revenue, they can't get listeners because nobody have the set. So we should go back to analog until that time comes, and all the sets should make with analog, FM, digital, and all the other things. So that's what Ofcom need to do. And they need to give us a proper license right across London, not just in a little bit, a bit here, a bit there, a bit there. It's not commercially viable.
I disagree with the thing about DAB, because I can pick up Colourful Radio on my phone, on my laptop, on my iPad, on my computer. So you don't necessarily have to have a radio in order to do that. And I think that part of the future will be an increasingly digitised radio future. And we do have a black radio station. It is called Colourful, and we should get behind it because it's the only one we've got now. Lest we see that one get bought out, and then 10 years' time when it's diluted, you know, we then start to get angry about it.
We have a very, very big urban scene with the youth at the moment. Massive. Untapped by the black community, but by other communities, BBC, Virgin are getting involved. They're all tapping in. And it's creating there's a big buzz. Where is the tapping into that?
Initially, it was a brilliant thing. It was something that we all aspired to. Everybody wanted that, but in the long run, they didn't. I don't believe that Choice saw my music, which is basically reggae, as a music that could bring in advertising, because there was no reggae on daytime radio anyway. Hence why the pirates them survived, because the pirates them not supposed to survive with a legal station, yeah. And the pirates, they survive down the band because the music that the general public who want to listen music, they never got that. It was never a balance. You had reggae 7 till 9 and then 12 till something. You didn't get you probably got 4 hours of reggae in 24 hours. So it was never, even from the beginning, it wasn't a station that was provided for the whole population of black people that was around.
BECTU partly got involved in this campaign because actually of a recent report that came out from an organisation called Skillset, which showed that in the entertainment industry over the last 10 years, though the amount of overall jobs have gone up, actually the amount of black people employed in the industry has gone down. So in an expanded industry, we're getting squeezed down. What's happening what's happened to Choice is just a small example of the way the industry is going, and I think from the union's point of view, one of the most important things about actually standing up and making and fighting back about this now is for two reasons. One is that initially when the commercial radio FM analog was franchised, it was on the basis of supposedly creating community commercial radio in this country. Before that, in the black community, we were forced to broadcast music on pirate radio stations, and people took the risk of getting prosecuted in order to get the music and news out there.
The reality is you've got radio stations out there now. And what we should be doing is gathering them together and forming a black media consortium that can go to these big businesses and Ofcom and start to hold them accountable for what they're supposed to be doing for us here in London. But I also think we should extend that campaign to say to currently pirate radio stations, you know, there must be some pathway from pirate radio station into legality. There's got to be. Otherwise, Ofcom and the rest of us are just encouraging, through the institutionalised racism of the mainstream system, we're just actually encouraging the growth of that pirate radio. And some of it is brilliant, but some of it is rubbish. You know, sometimes I hear those discussion programmes that you're talking about, and they're absolutely on point. And sometimes I just think if any kid is listening to that, they're going to get really messed up by what I've just heard.
The time has come where actually we've got to insist that Ofcom make sure that those frequencies broadcast for the black community. As George said, Ofcom are now monitoring the frequencies. We want them to do more than that. We need them to have a proper investigation and respond to the complaints that have been made from the community. We know that actually they're not complying with what they're supposed to do in terms of the licence, and we need them to say that. BECTU have approached and put pressure on the minister who's got responsibility for race equality and got him to write a letter to Ofcom as well, saying actually an investigation should take place.
Chuka, we're just wrapping up on the Choice FM name change and what the public and the...
I think it's a bit more than a name change, isn't it?
And if you just want to say a few words on that.
Yeah, well, look, I'm sorry, apologies for being late. I was chairing another event in another part of my constituency. You're sitting in my constituency now, by the way, so those who aren't from this constituency, welcome. And thank you to The Voice for being that voice for so long. I've been reading The Voice since I was a nipper, and thank God we've got The Voice. I thought I would just say something very quickly about choice, and I know there are going to be other issues that are spoken about, just to give you my perspective and update you on how what came to pass has come to pass. I was actually just listening to Capital Extra on my way here. Look, the first thing is, I, like everybody else who grew up in this borough, I listened to Choice. I grew up with Choice because it was the only station that provided choice in terms of my own music tastes. And I think we all know that one of the reasons that, and you know, you can have your views on this, and I'm bound to say as a Member of Parliament, you know, I don't encourage people engaging in illegal activity, but, you know, one of the reasons that there has been so many pirate radio stations, we all know the names of them over the years in London, is because mainstream radio, particularly before the growth of online media, simply was not playing the music that we like to listen to and that our community create and trumpet and are leaders in around the world. And that's why Choice was called Choice, because it provided a choice and it provided a forum for the music that is created in this community to be promoted, to be shared with people. And that's why when I got the call from the board at Global Radio informing me of the announcement they were about to make in respect to the future of Choice, I was dismayed and very worried about what that was going to mean for the future of Choice, now Capital Extra. And what informed my angst and anxiety was what I saw happen to Kiss 100. Now, we all know what happened to Kiss FM in the late 90s when EMAP decided to take a turn in direction, and people like, you know, fantastic broadcasters like Steve Jackson were thrown off the station, and how what was providing something unique and specialist at all hours of the day, not like at 1 in the morning, we all saw what happened to Kiss, and how frankly it just became another imitation of Capital Radio, in my view, during the day certainly. And I think the concern was, and I expressed this to Global Radio, that the danger was with what they were going to do, and have now done, was that Choice FM, now Capital Extra, would simply go the way of Kiss 100, thereby reducing choice and reducing the platform that there is for the the very different, rich diversity of music that comes out of the black community in our country. And so, you know, now Global Radio explained to me the commercial rationale for them making their decision, and I was told that the reason that they had decided to make the decision that they had made was because Choice was loss-making, and because of the way that it was currently branded at the time, they were not able to get the ad revenue that they would have wanted. And so for them, using the Capital brand to make it more of an attractive commercial proposition to advertisers, in addition to putting the £1 million that they put into it, they thought was the best way of enabling them to continue with it as an ongoing concern. Now, they didn't need to explain this to me. This was information provided to me in good faith, and I'm just sharing it with you. So I think in terms of the future, the important thing is that Capital Extra, formerly Choice, does not lose its distinctive identity, and that it doesn't just become a pale imitation of many of the other radio outlets we already have. Because otherwise, well, what's the point? It's still, ultimately, whatever it's called, must provide choice. And I think that, for me, is the absolute priority. I mean, look, there is no point, the authorities and others complaining about the proliferation of pirate radio, etc., if you do not ensure that the lawful forms of communicating do not provide a choice. And I think that's really important for me. But just to finish off on this point, and then I'll shut up. I do actually think in this, we have also got to remember the progress that has been made, and actually the changing nature of media today, actually, George. Because, there are a lot of us who are a bit older in this room, there are people here who are older than me, who, are quite emotional about choice, and think about it, we grew up with choice, right? But the younger generation, they are communicating in completely different ways through social media, they're running their own radio stations online. And so for them, they're not going to feel quite the same way. And in some senses, that is a bit of progress, because it shows just the extent to which the younger generation are using those other platforms to promote their own talents and music. So I think it's important, we keep an eye on more conventional, analog forms of media, but also let's celebrate the progress that our young people in particular are making in a positive way. I mean, people so often talk about the negatives, but in a positive way, using all those other different platforms too. And, we can all point to new artists coming on through who have made their name online, have made their name through promotion through Twitter and all these other platforms. So let's not forget that. Let's celebrate that. And I talk about young generations more broadly too. I mean, I look. Everybody I think here probably knows I'm part Nigerian and proud of it. And I just look at the Niger media. So much of that is online. Really, that's where all the action is. Much no disrespect to you, George, but much more so than in print. So let's celebrate that too.